Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e. We're going to talk about Prince. That's right, the singer. Not really, actually not the case at all. No, this is a player's guide to the Princes of the Apocalypse for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Princes of the Apocalypse is part of the Elemental Evil storyline. For those of you who didn't know, there is an adventure called Temple of Elemental Evil, and really I feel like this is a remake, but that's really beside the point. This is a player's guide. That means essentially no spoilers for the players because it's a player's guide, but there should be some general advice related to the adventure. And yes, I will be putting a few images in here, and I suppose some of you might say, well, that, Fred, is a spoiler, and I would say to you that there are so many different things that I have left out and are unrelated in many respects, but the context is not there, so I don't feel like it's really a spoiler if you ask me. Now, as I have already mentioned about Princes of the Apocalypse, I'm not a fan of this adventure. In fact, I just about wet myself and had to go to the toilet a couple of times before doing this video. All of this advice is from my personal experience and also the two groups of players that have played through the adventure, including my home group. That's right, my home group decided to weigh in on this. In fact, a lot of this advice and what they had to say is taken from them. For those of you who are wondering if this was sort of only my perspective, actually it's coming from a lot of different people. Let's start off with the first thing. I would suggest to you is to beg your dungeon master to run a completely different adventure to save the other players, including yourself, and the dungeon master's sanity. That would be my first piece of advice to you with regard to this adventure. If you don't want to take that on board and you feel like you want to keep going, then here we go. There really are no best or better classes or races or backgrounds for this adventure. And this is simply because there are so many different types of situations in the adventure. So it doesn't really matter what sort of class you take. The only piece of advice that my players had were, well, don't forget to take a cleric. But that's not like the best class to take, it's not like that. You know, it's always a good idea to take a cleric. So not really anything dramatic there. My suggestion to you is make sure to take flexible spells with plenty of options and lots of damage types. This is going to be really useful, and I don't want to spell it out and give away everything to you, but that's essentially what I would go for. Varied damage types is really useful in this adventure. Make sure you bring yourself a colouring book, pencils, and some felt tip pens to the game table. And I know a few of you are starting to wonder if you have just joined some sort of happy hour where Fred has decided to play a whole lot of jokes on you, but I'm serious. Bring a colouring book, pencils, and felt tips. If you can't bring that along, then I would suggest a smartphone is a great option, provided the Dungeon Master will allow you to use it at the table. Okay, what is the colouring book for? Well, you're going to pull out the colouring book when you get confused, when you are frustrated with the adventure or frustrated with the Dungeon Master, but really, to be fair, I feel it's more the adventure, and also when you are lost and start getting bored. These are the times when you need to pull out those colouring books and your phone, because it will make life so much easier for you and probably your Dungeon Master, provided you're not pulling out the smartphone at the inappropriate time, or even the colouring book at the inappropriate time. Trust me, you'll know the right time to do it. Keep a detailed set of notes if you have any chance of not getting very confused, frustrated, and completely lost. Now, everybody says always take detailed notes, but it's absolutely vital for this adventure. Not only if you take notes will it help you and the other players, it will help your Dungeon Master as they wade through the adventure book, getting lost themselves, because it's going to happen. Trust me, it's going to happen. I can't count the number of times that we had a player who kept really good notes and helped out the Dungeon Master actually figure out what the heck was going on because they had taken such fantastic notes. There was just so much going on. Map out all of the locations because they're so complex and interlinked and it is so difficult to figure out where you're going next and where you have to go back to. So my suggestion is map everything, and if you can't map it yourself as a player, get your dungeon master to give you the maps, because it's going to make life so much easier. I know we couldn't have coped without some sort of map guidance. You needed like a GPS for this adventure, really. I've already said it, the adventure is very confusing, and this is because there are so many factions and there are so many adventure goals. I can't count the different number of adventure goals. They vary all over the place. Some of them are related to the main story and some of them are not. So you need to make sure that you are aware that if you start feeling confused and dumb, don't feel confused and dumb, because that's just part of the adventure. Now, the adventure designers made, as far as I'm concerned, a pretty big mess of this pre-made story. So don't blame your dungeon master for what you feel is poor delivery of the adventure story, because there's so much that would require significant effort and fixing. And in some cases, I, as a dungeon master, gave up. And I will explain what happened in a second. If you want to quit playing in the campaign, that's actually not unusual. It's actually quite common. I had one group quit on me because I was DMing, but I suppose you could put it down to, oh, well, Fred, it's down to your poor DMing or dungeon mastering. That was the reason they quitted. But actually, no, it was because they were bored and they felt like every location was exactly the same. Plus, they were getting completely confused about what the heck they were supposed to be doing in this story. Hence, that was part of the problem. Now, my second group, which is my home group, this group that I played in, I wasn't dungeon mastering, I was just a player, and one of my friends decided they would have a crack at it and dungeon master. They got very frustrated and confused with the adventure, and as a result, the entire group, almost the entire group, decided, look, we want to quit due to boredom. We're just so sick and tired of this adventure and the amount of effort it's requiring our dungeon master to figure out how to piece it all together, that we just don't want to stop. We don't want to stop playing. The only reason we continued to play was because one of our players was convinced that we should continue, and convinced the entire group that we should keep going, and we would start our own cult called the Fire Bear Clan, and induct everybody we ever met into this Fire Bear Clan and make our own cult that pretty much would take over the world. I know that sounds kind of evil and sick, but it certainly helped us continue on. A lot of the combat encounters near the end of the adventure are stupidly hard and deadly. Now, you already know my views on dungeon mastering and character death. I don't have really a big issue with that sort of stuff. But this was one of the things that was pointed out by one of our power gamers at the table, that he felt like so many of the encounters near the end of the adventure were not only incredibly deadly and extremely hard, and like the fact that we even got through or didn't get through in some cases was just a miracle. And not only that, they were dull. That was one of the key things that I pulled out from that adventure. And that wasn't the only player. We had another person who was like, I don't know how we managed to get through half of that stuff. In fact, we didn't get through a lot of it because characters died. That's just what happened. It's a sandbox adventure. You can go anywhere you like and get into any kind of trouble you like, which means your dungeon master is going to try to figure out how to prep for each session. It's going to be really hard. So if they feel like they are trucking through their notes, flipping through pages and so forth, like I said, that's the good time to pull out that colouring book or your smartphone, because you're going to need that. And that'll help occupy you while they figure out what's going on next. Magic items are incredibly powerful in this adventure, but hugely disappointing overall. There's really two factors that make them disappointing, but I don't want to say what they are because it would actually give too much away. But that was the resounding consensus within my home group with regard to the magic items. Fair enough, this is my opinion and my home group's and one other group's opinion. So you don't have to take any of this. You can just leave it and say, Fred, it's grains of salt. I'll just put it away and do my own thing. That's fine too. It's very hard to know what the quest goal is near the beginning of the adventure. Because it's not clearly spelt out, and because you wind up with what is essentially sort of like a side quest at the very beginning of this campaign, the end result is it's not clear what's going on. In fact, it's entirely possible, unless the dungeon master sort of throws the adventure hook at you, which I suggest they probably should, you won't know what's going on, because you can walk right past that vital piece of information that gets you going. It doesn't necessarily link to anything easily too, so there's a lot of mystery, a lot of trying to figure things out, and that makes life quite difficult. I suggest that you play smart in your combat encounters. A lot of them are really easy, but there are some that are just due to the environment that you're fighting in, make them really dangerous and really difficult. So play smart when it comes to combat encounters. I've said it before, pretty generic stuff, and I would say it again, and that is teamwork, 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 teamwork. Can't say that word enough, really. If you don't use teamwork, yeah, it's time to go home and do something else. Next, make sure to create your characters together and have them have a linking relationship. That's really the only thing that's going to save this adventure, is your core group relationships and the fact that you created characters together that will actually hold you together, because this adventure is going to pull you in all sorts of directions, so you need to have a really strong group, otherwise it doesn't work. Try to have fun. Last piece of advice, try to have fun, or just eat lots of junk food and tell lots of silly jokes. That would be one of my key pieces of advice. It worked well for my group, and I suggest doing the same. All I have to say now is good luck, all the best to you. Now, I know this sounds like a terrible set of player advice, but I have said it before that Princes of the Apocalypse is a steaming pile of junk for a dungeon master and a pain in the butt for players. But if you're going to play through, there is some decent advice here, even though it seems cynical in some way. Well, actually, it's definitely very cynical, because that's sort of my view. Anyway, if you found this useful, great. I have plenty of videos for dungeon masters and players. You're welcome to go and check them out. Other player guides which you might feel are a bit more useful to you compared to this one, for different pre-made adventures, and lots of dungeon master and player advice generally for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing this sort of stuff, then guess what? I have a Patreon page like just about everybody does. I have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon where you can buy stuff online if you do that sort of stuff. If you don't worry about it. I have a merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos that also supports the channel, or just watch my videos, that's fine too. If you have managed to stay around this long, great. Make sure to share, like and subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.